what's going on Instagram, and now what's going on YouTube. So, Happy New Year, everybody. Hope everyone's having a great New Year's Day. We didn't do anything really crazy last night. It's kind of a, being 30 over 30 thing. Didn't get in any trouble. Nothing too crazy. So I hope you guys had a great New Year, and that's about all I got to say about that, because New Year's doesn't really change anything for me. Honestly, I'm just still going to keep working on the same stuff. I think that if you think that the new year is going to really make some big change in your life, have patience, try things out, but it definitely doesn't have to be anything crazy. So first off, we're doing something new today. We are actually live streaming on TikTok, which I think is kind of cool because TikTok is a new platform that I've been doing. And if you're not on TikTok yet, get on TikTok. That's all I got to say. There was I think it was a New York Times article that essentially said TikTok was a spying thing for the Chinese, which, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure that they use your data. I'm sure that they do. But in the same sense, the exposure I've gotten from TikTok through a couple videos is absolutely extraordinary. Whereas if I'm on Instagram and I post something, I've got 9,000 followers. So sometimes it'll get seen by like 500 people. On TikTok, one of the videos I posted got seen 800,000 times. It's unbelievable because there's not enough people making content to suffice for the number of people who are consuming the content. So you get a ton of extra exposure essentially. And if it's good and people like it and interact with it, it'll go really far. I think I've had 4 or 5 posts that have gotten over 100,000 views and and then that one that went to like 800,000. I was really hoping it would hit 1 million, but that was stretching it. But so big thank you to Braden Hebert and Preston Swick for running that hidden ball trick, because that was sick. And the fact that I actually got to video it well was probably one of the coolest things ever. So for TikTok, because we're adding them in, when I do live streams, it probably won't work very well for TikTok. What I like to do, and the reason why I do any live stream, is because I really want to improve my ability to speak through my ideas, because a lot of times as I'm trying to say what I'm learning about or when I'm doing certain things, I want to be able to express them in a way where I can complete the thought. And a few of the ideas that I interact with recently are through Gary Vee and Jordan Peterson. And one of the things that makes both of those people, Jocko Willink is another one of the things that makes those people so enticing is their stories, because the things that they teach you are interlinked with the stories. And so one of the troubling things with trying to emulate someone who is teaching you something is that in order to really convey what they're meaning, it can't be their story, right? So there are certain truths that go throughout and they emanate through society. And they're, definitely through American culture, Canadian culture. I mean, really, they go back to ancient myths and things of that nature, the hero myth, things where the story becomes the way of articulating the idea. And I realized that one of the reasons why I can't express certain things very well is basically, I love the new PLL team, by the way. I think that the Water Dogs is a great logo. I don't care what anybody says. I think it's awesome. But so the thing that I realized was that I needed to articulate my own stories, because if I don't have my own story, or if I can't essentially find the places within my own story where these teachings come to life, I can't really articulate them in a beneficial way, because I'd be telling other people's stories. So one of the reasons why this is the story of POWLAX is because I want to try to find and talk through my experiences with lacrosse, so that as I spread my knowledge for the sport and do speeches and other things of that nature, basically I will have the ability to use my own stories and make it kind of personal. So that's basically why I want to find the stories within my own story that convey the teachings that I would like to teach. So that's the intro. And so we're going to start it all off. So I have a few notes on this, but for the most part, it's nothing too crazy. But so to start off, I'm going to start with my family. So, one second, let me readjust this. Okay. So my family was predominantly a soccer family. And so my brother Tim, Chris, Nick all played soccer. I played soccer. It was definitely the sport of choice for us. We definitely had a lot of fun playing soccer in the backyard. We would do games where we would have to essentially shoot the ball across the backyard and try and, make a goal by going between two posts. We had a ton of, fun playing soccer. And then when my older brothers, and so just to explain the brothers, my three brothers are 12, 9, and 6 years older than I am. And so my brother Tim was in high school when I was like 3. But so when my brother Chris went into high school, one of his friends invited him to play lacrosse. And so he ended up getting hold on one second, let me write this. What's up, Keegan? He ended up getting a stick. He brought a stick home, and that was all it took. My brother Nick started playing, and lacrosse totally took over our family, right? So now I would characterize us as a lacrosse family more than a soccer family. And so my brothers are, being soccer players, were very athletic. They both played in a state championship game. And I remember vividly sitting in Stutler Bowl, essentially listening to people complain about the fact that Eagle Crest, who they played for, had no 2-slide, and that was why East Manual beat them. And I remember even at that point thinking about, there's something about this game that I don't understand yet, and therefore I really want to make sure that as I start to play it, that I understand it. And so even from like the very first time I got introduced to the sport, I really wanted to try to figure out why and how it worked. So let's see. Another thing about my family is why I am the way I am today. Like, so all of my brothers are essentially half brothers. They're all my dad's sons, and I have a different mom. But there was never, ever a note of, oh, you're, it's funny because I think about it like Harry Potter. I'm like, oh, you're a mudblood, you're a half-blood or something like that. But there was definitely never anything that made me apart. Like, I remember my brother Nick, we used to play football where basically so I'm 6 years younger than him. So I was probably, 8 and he was probably, what would that be, 14? And I would run at the couch and I would have to score a touchdown on the couch. But so there was always this element of play within our house. And our ability to like throw in the front yard was something where, as they were trying to throw left-handed because they had just picked up the sport, I was throwing left-handed when I was 8, whereas they were 14. And so there was this level of encouragement because I was already trying to throw left-handed at a young age. And so it really helped me learn and develop with I don't want to say self-esteem, because I don't think it's self-esteem. I don't like the idea of self-esteem, because I don't think you should have esteem for, if you have something to get better, if you can get better at something and you're kind of on a mission, I don't think you hold yourself in high esteem. I think that you essentially just have confidence enough to know that you can try and fail and just keep going. But so there was an acceptance there of he's working. So another one of my very telling, but so the play avenue was what really sold me on lacrosse. And so another thing that we did was, so we had a dog named Cassie, and Cassie had died. I didn't really know Cassie very well, but so Cassie had a wooden doghouse that ended up below our deck. And on our house, we had essentially this cement slab and kind of a hill going up to it, and then a deck that was right there. And my brother Nick and I would spend hours in the backyard shooting at this doghouse, trying to put holes in it. And like the one time I shot it and it put a hole in it was, such an unbelievable feeling, because it was this connection that I had with my brother Nick, and this, it became a part of me, if that makes sense. And so it's funny because I don't think I put the hole in the doghouse. I think he put the hole in the doghouse. And so, then I just put the ball through it at the same spot. He broke it, I put it through. But so there was this element of play that really helped me to just, be encouraged by the sport. So the other thing, and this is kind of a bummer about that house, is that we had a wall, and it was built in spots with bricks, but the backyard wasn't a good place for the wall. So where we would play wall ball was actually in front of our house in the on the driveway. So if you imagine a regular straight driveway with two cars about that width, and essentially you step up one step onto our front porch, and there's a 4 foot, I'd say probably like 3.5 foot high brick wall, and then drywall above it, and that is kind of what it looked like. And so we would play wall ball, and we would put duct tape in a little square where you would start throwing it, and I wasn't good enough when I started to be able to hit that spot, but I remember my dad always telling me, soon enough you're just going to be able to hit that spot every time, and that's kind of what it was. But so there was definitely this level of encouragement. And so that was definitely something that was awesome. So another thing that I used to do, and this is something that I learned from lacrosse in general, was like failing is nothing. If you fail at something, if you try something and you fail at it, it means absolutely nothing. Just get back on the horse and ride it again. So I'd say one thing that I've never had trouble with is being alone. So I've never been someone who really, really strived to, be connected. I mean, I liked being connected. I never really had like a full-on super good group of friends. I kind of like navigated through a few friend sets, and I could always kind of go into and out of any group that I wanted. And I think I've hit a bunch of windows, Keegan, especially at Arrowhead Elementary. I hit a couple windows, but don't tell anyone because then they might come for me. But so there were a few windows broken. We had these neighbors who were just awful, and we broke a couple of their windows too. But that wasn't me. That was my older brothers. So one of the things that I used to do and that I advocate for heavily is I would just play with my stick in front of the TV as I watched TV. And I would switch hands. Here's another good story. So my brother Nick, when he taught me how to switch hands, he basically taught me the idea of, as you switch hands, to think of it like a sword in a sheath and to throw the stick down and then come back up. And I still teach it in a very similar way today. I basically added in the idea of like asking them a question of who is Jack Sparrow, and then they say a pirate. Okay, what does a pirate do with his sword after he's done fighting? And then they do the action, and then they realize that the action is connected to something that they already know, instead of trying to just show them and have them mimic what you do. So, point being is that's one thing that I learned. And I've never had this thing where I've always had to interact with like everyone around me or like be around people. So I would end up spending a lot of time in the basement with my stick alone, and I just started to do lacrosse tricks. I remember I saw one specific trick on, obviously it wasn't on YouTube. It must have been on AOL something, but I must have been 10, and essentially a kid stalled the ball, tossed it up, turned the head of the stick over, stalled it, and then hit it with the back of his shaft. And I was like, oh, I bet I could do that. And so then I just would do tricks after tricks in the basement, trying to stall regular, and then between my legs, and then behind my back, and then between my legs, and then in front of me. And then once I get it, I'd practiced enough to where I'd get it, and then I'd run upstairs and I would show my dad and my family in front of the movie they were watching, and they'd kind of get pissed because there was no DVR back then. They would just kind of have to deal with me being in front of the TV. And so, but they were also always, excited when I hit something correctly. So that was kind of very cool. So, but that ability to just do new things with the stick that my brothers weren't doing and that I didn't see anybody else doing was something that I felt was pretty original. And, to this day, there are, I want to say 3 or 4 people that can do some of the same stuff I can. You got Matt Gibson for sure. Then you have Silky Lax. Then you have, what's his name? There's another kid. It's not Silky. It's, I forget it. I want to say it's like electricity or something like that, but it's not. But so there are a few people that like have really done the tricks a lot. And the thing that I noticed when I started playing, so another kind of interesting thing for me was that I didn't play organized lacrosse until 5th grade. I played with my brothers in the backyard. That was what we did. And as I played with my brothers in the backyard, that's where I learned most of the skills that I have today, because I would just sit and I would play all the time. And that was something that really helped me to just develop my stick skills, so that then when I did go out and play, I could catch better than 90% of the kids that were out there, because they were kind of just either picking up the sport, or, they had played a couple of years but had never really done too much with it. And so I definitely had the skill aspect down. And so when it comes to things like, 1 second, I got to turn the brightness down on my iPad or else it'll die. But so there's a level of learning the skill in an element in my backyard that, because I practiced it all the time, really helped me once I actually got to the field. And I think that you can definitely learn the skills, but then you do have to incorporate it into the game. So let's see, in 5th grade, I didn't have, a ton of goals or anything. I remember my first goal, I faced off, I picked the ball up and I walked a dog through 2 or 3 people, put it on my collarbone and shot it, and I scored, and it was my first goal. I remember my first lefty goal was in my first game in, I want to say 8th grade, when I started playing with the Smoky Hill feeder team. And so that was how I kind of found the sport. I found it through my brothers. They always encouraged me. My dad always encouraged me. We kind of found the sport as a family, and the acceptance and encouragement that I got from them was always something that was great. I mean, I remember, as I did start playing and interacting with the game, the conversations that we would have in the car were never really geared towards anything other than the mental state you were going into the game with. Like, I remember having conversations with my dad about soccer, where he was telling me, like, you can't worry about getting hurt. And the funny thing is, I think that soccer screwed my brain up a little bit, because I'd see all these people diving, writhing on the ground, and my 6-year-old brain thought that they broke their ankle, not understanding that they were just diving. And so I remember playing soccer thinking I was going to hurt myself, when really they were just diving. And so, but I couldn't conceive of that when I was that young. So it was almost like a little trick. I thought that all these people were hurting themselves playing soccer, when in reality, they really weren't. And so that was how I found the sport. There was always a community around me with my family, and that's just how our family is. Like, I get noticed a bunch in Aurora and all around, like, oh, you're a Chapla. Oh, because all these people know my brothers. And it's funny, because recently my brothers tell me stories about how they're like, oh wait, POWLAX, that's your brother? Like, oh, that's cool. And so it's kind of cool that now that POWLAX is growing, that they get that back. Like, my brother Tim was talking about, I gave him a POWLAX hoodie, and someone in Highlands Ranch, where he lives, was like, POWLAX? Oh, that's crazy. Da, da, da. And then they start their conversations. But so the communal aspect and the love of the game, it got tied into my family, much in the same way that I feel it's tied into Native American culture. And so, as much as they look at it as a gift and as something to be done to entertain the creator and all of the history of it, I feel that same amount because of its tie in my family. And so, okay, that was good. And so now I'm going to get into high school. And high school was interesting. I was a cocky little shithead, honestly. And I remember being a freshman, kind of bragging to all of the upperclassmen that I was going to make varsity as a freshman. I remember this kid, Justin Harvey, was a year older than me, and he made varsity as a freshman, but he also played on a couple club teams, and I never played on any club teams. Like, I think the Red Hawks were the only club team. Rocco Romero actually played for the Red Hawks and Grayland, a private school, I think in Denver. Rocco Romero played in the 2009 national championship with Cornell, who got beat by Syracuse in the last couple seconds. He was one of their top midfielders. He's now the head coach at Kent. He also coached with UVA a couple years ago, but so he grew up in the Colorado kind of system, then went out to Boys Latin and yada yada. Just Rocco's a good dude, but he took a very different path in lacrosse than I did. But so, because I had these skills as a freshman, I thought I'd make varsity because Justin did. And, I was cocky. I had no idea what it was about. But because of how Justin played as a freshman on varsity, no one else could make that jump. like our Coach Bowman, wouldn't make the jump. And it was a very smart decision. I think that it takes a very, very skilled and developed player to be able to play varsity as a freshman, especially now. It's even worse now. But in the time, there wasn't as much cross between football and lacrosse as there is now, where a lot of the football players are just as skilled as the lacrosse only players. So either way, I was cocky, didn't make varsity my freshman year. I was just on the freshman team. I got bumped up to a JV tournament at the end of the year, did very well in that JV tournament. But yeah, either way. And I've got tons and tons of stories through high school. We'll go over a couple of them. So I remember my very first practice. So, and just to set the stage a little further, so I went to Smoky Hill High School. My mom's house was right on the back fence facing Smoky Hill. So if you're looking south from Smoky Hill High School and you look to the left, there are all of the fields. There's the now softball field, which used to be the Dust Bowl is what we called it, because it was our lacrosse field, and it didn't have any grass on the top of it. It was just dirt. And so as we would run on it, it would kick up all this dust and you would end up with this little dust bowl. But so my house was on the fence just past that field and right behind the now Walmart. And so we had a little gate that you could walk through. So my mom used to actually pick up all the lacrosse balls from the lacrosse practices when she ran the dogs out there. And so that was kind of cool. I never ran out of lacrosse balls. Now I wouldn't even use those balls because they were terrible and all greasy and whatnot. But I mean, if you don't have any other balls, you're going to use whatever balls you have. But so that's how close I was to Smoky. And so my very first practice was, I think, my 8th grade year. And, I just got to walk. I just hopped through my fence or got on the trampoline and hopped over, and I went to Smoky Hill. And so that put me really close to a wall we'll talk about in a second. So within our very first practice, we were in a gym. It was snowing out. So we all got in a big line and we all took a shot on goal. And my shot was sidearm. Nailed the crossbar, bar down, ping, perfect, like exactly where I wanted to hit it, like really torqued through it, because this was my first time with the high school, shooting. And lo and behold, what do I hear? What do you guys think I heard? Overhand, shoot it overhand. And so from even then, I remember just everyone talking overhand. But I had no idea. I didn't really care, in all honesty. I just thought my shot was pretty good. And so it's just kind of funny that even now I try and teach kids to shoot overhand, but there's a spot for sidearm and there's a spot for it. But if you're developing players, overhand seems better. But so it's just funny that's, I'm teaching the same stuff now that I used to. So as I start playing, I had my stepsister Erin, who was a year older than me, was already in school. And so a couple of her friends saw me as a freshman coming in who was pretty skilled. And, I don't know if I think they kind of resented the fact that I was younger than them, but also probably would play a lot more than them as I, went up through the ranks. But so I remember getting this shot at our first game. We were doing warm-ups and we were just doing just line drills. And this kid kept shooting the ball at me, like right at my chest. And my brothers and I used to play this game called handcuffing. And essentially, as we would throw it to each other, we would try and throw it to an awkward spot where we'd be able to catch it. And this helped me tremendously because it was a game. I loved playing it because it was me and my brothers interacting, but I got really good at catching these really awful passes. And because it was a game, it was never frustrating. But this kid, I won't name him, but he kept shooting the ball at me, and it was annoying. And I remember at one point, I couldn't quite get it, and I caught it with my hand, and I got yelled at because of it. But so it's just another kind of funny little story about kind of overcoming that. Then as we played that first game, I never really got that again because I had like 3 goals, and it was a good time. I think that the ability to understand that I was going to help more than I was going to hurt was kind of accepted at that point. So here in high school at Smoky Hill, when I went there, was incredible. It was a great lacrosse community. And here's one of the reasons why. So if you have Smoky Hill High School, then you have Laredo Middle School. They're right next to each other. And because I lived so close, I could always just walk to wherever I wanted to. So between Smoky Hill and Laredo, if you walk through the Smoky Hill parking lot towards Laredo and you go through the fence, there's this little flat area. And they can't do this anymore because of the tennis courts, but so there are tennis courts right there too. And at this little flat area before the hill that goes down to Laredo, we had a goal there. And you'd take a bunch of balls and you would go shoot. And on any random day, you'd see a bunch of different people. John Tomlinson, Ryan McDonald, Alan Tiet, Chris Fasano, Little Fatty Fasano, like Jeff Brooks as I got older. Like all of these kids, we would all just go and we would play. Scott Cadiz. There was a whole community that we built where it was literally just going and playing. And so when I showed up there, we would play things like 1v1, v1, 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 where it was basically you just pick up the ball and you just play. And you would try to score, we would try and hit pipes, and it was just a fun thing to go do. You'd have certain kids who wanted to learn how to shoot. You'd have a couple kids. If you had enough kids, you would probably do this thing where we'd essentially create an umbrella, and the only rule was you have to feed the person who just fed in order to shoot next. So you'd throw the ball, you'd catch it, you'd shoot it, and that was basically how it all went. And the ability to just have this spot that was just for the lacrosse team was one of the coolest things we had, because it created this community for our program that really helped us to, just connect on a better level than just being a teammate and doing everything on our own. And so that was one part of my experience that if I could emulate and have my perfect experience for a high school lacrosse team, I would want to know where that place is for our players, right? And so I think we can actually create one at CT now, because there is this kind of little half field, but either way, I'm an assistant. I don't have to deal with it, but I would love to set that up at CT. So couple other memories. So first memory that I really definitely, I've already been going through a couple of them, but so was the JV tournament. I was super excited to play in the JV tournament when I was on the freshman team the whole year. Okay, another thing. Freshman year. I think I'm hot shit, right? Because I'm scoring a lot of goals on freshmen. And I remember getting the ball, trying to clear against Regis, and all of the Regis kids were the Grayland kids who'd been playing forever. And I remember getting the ball and trying to essentially do a punt return clear. And the one player played me here, the other player played me in front of me, and as I'm running up the sideline, the one kid cut me off, and the second kid hit me right down the little tiny hill towards there's like this manhole cover right there. But oh man, just totally crushed me. But my brain thinking I could just kind of walk over someone was totally just dumb. And so that's one. And then the second one was as I played in the JV tournament, it was amazing because there were a lot more skilled players, but the speed of it fit right into my ability playing with my brothers. And so I had the speed of it, and what I needed was just that extra element of the skilled players around me. And so it was unreal to just kind of be brought up and to do well and be on first line with that team. So, and I just flipped the camera. Hold on. How did I do that? There we go. Now we're back. Cool. So sophomore year, these are some better stories. Let's see. Nothing else. We don't have to address anything. We got comments coming in, but they're general comments, which is nice. So, sophomore year, I make varsity. I'm the fourth attackman, just the fourth. It was who was the lefty? I think there was a Ryan, and then it was John Tomlinson was one, and John ended up going to CSU and winning a national championship with CSU, and then Ryan McDonald, and then Scott Cadiz, he was the big righty. So Scott Cadiz at one point while we were in the gym took a shot at Mike. I forget Mike's last name. He was our goalie, but Mike was a hockey goalie, so we wore those big hockey chest pads, and Scott shot the ball so hard it hit Mike right in the chest, and he had to stop and leave the gym. And I was like, whoa, dude, that dude's powerful. Scott was he was a linebacker too. So he was just big, powerful kid. Scott, excellent dude. And the cool thing about another kind of family thing was that my brothers played with Scott's older brother too. So it was, there was this kind of connection in that way as well to the community through my brothers. So, story. The very first time I stepped on the field as a varsity player, very first time. So, address. We had a game against Gateway. Now, Gateway wasn't a very good team. They were actually a pretty awful team as far as actual lacrosse skill goes. But so it was a game that I could actually play in. It was the very first game of Smokey's thing in 2003. And I'm really excited because I know I'm going to get to play because we're up by like 9 goals. So I'm very excited. I'm warmed up on the sideline. I'm ready to go in. And they put me in. Very first play, I run to X and I'm playing. I catch the ball, I move the ball, and then a kid named Chris Fasano dodges and he sweeps to the left from top left, sweeps to his left, shoots the ball, gets hit, and scores. And so I'm like, whoa. And I've practiced with Chris on the field so many times. And I run up to him and I look down and it's like there's a calf muscle, but on his shin. And he's screaming. And so literally the very first time I stepped on the field ever, one of my friends shoots, gets hit, and his leg snaps in half. And so I'm like, oh, and then the trainers come in, the ambulance got there, everything stops, and, Chris has his, they gave him morphine, and it was kind of funny talking to him later about that morphine, but, it was just the very first time I stepped on the field, a friend of mine, broke his leg. So kind of crazy how that happened. But so he was then out for the season and yada, yada. And later on in the game, I scored my first varsity goal, which I don't even remember too well, honestly. Don't really remember that too much. I remember my very first goal as far as playing Summer League, which was a lefty goal. That was kind of cool. But that was something that definitely will stick with me because watching him go down and then, seeing his leg broken was something that I'll never forget it. It was just crazy. So another thing that was crazy was I mentioned Scott Cadiz and his power and how he shot at Mike Rowe was at one of the tournaments that we went to. He shot a ball and it hit a kid right in the side of the ear hole and it broke his ear hole out and the plastic actually cut his ear. That's just another terrible story. So, here's the thing about older brothers. If you have older brothers, you're going to cuss. It's just how it goes. You're just going to cuss because they cuss and you cuss. And so, I cuss all the time. I try not to cuss on these because they get demonetized. I literally said the F word one time on one of these videos and it got demonetized, which, it doesn't really matter. Not too many people watch the live streams yet, but it's just kind of funny how that happens. But so that ties into the next story. So at Smoky Hill, we would always go to Border War for spring break. And Border War was a tournament in Grand Junction where a bunch of teams from Utah and the Front Range of Denver would go and they would all play. And it's funny because we actually played against Juan Diego, which is a team that we now go out to play each year at CT and Grandview. Pause 1 moment. That was probably a bad idea. Coffee kind of gives you a phlegm kind of thing. So, at Border War, junior year, we're playing. It's a great time. I think everything kind of goes well. And this was the first time I learned that, like, high school boys in a hotel scene would probably break things. But so, apparently, one of the groups actually put the butt end of their lacrosse stick through the wall. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't have anything to do with it, but it was just kind of funny hearing about that story later. So, senior year. This was kind of interesting. So, speaking of Border War, we went to my senior year. Was it that year? I'm not sure. It might have actually been junior year because I think Alan Tiet was still playing with us. I think it was that year. But so I had 7 goals in one of these games that we played at Border War. I'm not really sure which year it was. But then before this game, I kind of like the coaches kind of gave it to us to, talk through it. And I just remember all of my teammates being like, dude, did you have to drop like 8 F-bombs in your little talk? Because that's usually, if I've ever get to this point where I'm, I think that cussing has its value. Very much so, especially with young kids. And so it's funny. I'll tell this story because I think it's a good story. So if you've watched my TikToks and you go a little bit down in my TikToks, you'll see a video of a 13-year-old girl doing a kickflip off of a 4-stair. So this was just a few days ago. So for a Christmas party, we went over to our neighbor's house. Our neighbor's uncle's daughter is a skater from California, and she's actually really good. So as I was kind of telling her about the TikTok hidden ball trick that was going nuts and how that was just crazy, she wanted to know what, my Instagram was and yada yada. So she hands me her phone because she wanted me to put my thing in there. I immediately looked at her Instagram, and the third picture down was her holding this glass cube, and I'm like, "What's that from?" And oh, that's a skating competition that I won. And so I'm like, I just got a brand new camera. I need to figure out how to essentially create cinematic pictures because I got these, they're called ND filters, yada, yada. But so I basically wanted to do that. And so as that's going on, I don't know what's happening with my thing right now. So as we start to talk, her dad, who's sitting at the table, starts kind of making these comments. Her dad and her sister. Her sister actually plays lacrosse as well. But so, he mentions like, you got to wear a helmet. You got to wear a helmet. You got to wear a helmet. And I literally think in my head, she doesn't hear you. She doesn't hear you at all. Why would she hear you? Because what they're really saying, so what you're really saying as a parent when you say you got to wear a helmet, you got to wear arm pads, you got to wear this and that, you're basically saying I'm scared that you're going to get hurt, right? Because if something happens to you, I don't know what I'll do, right? That's the fear. It's the same thing about whenever a kid is leaving the house, you say, hey, be careful. And you might want to say that every time, and that's fine. But there's a level of it that is untrusting. You don't trust them to get back completely. So therefore, as you say it, you're fearful of what might happen to them, and therefore that's kind of why you say what you say. But so as I'm hearing this, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this kind of needs a little bit of inner workings. So I look at her and I say, why don't you wear a helmet? I know why you don't wear a helmet. Why do you think you don't wear a helmet? She kind of like looks at me like, I don't know. And I'm like, you don't wear a helmet because you care what people think of you. And she's kind of like, oh, he totally got me, like he called me out. And I'm like, what's really cool about not caring what people think? First off, you stay better protected. And I'm like, how many dumb videos I've made, how many stupid things I've done, like all of this stuff, and kind of like how much bigger you can go if you wear a helmet and you wear pads. Like, oh, and then basically I was like, you know what I say to people who judge me, who kind of think I'm not doing the right thing? And I threw up a middle finger and was like, F you, right in front of her dad. This is a 13-year-old girl. I'm saying this right in front of her dad. And she kind of looks up at her dad, and I think someone else was like, oh, language. And then her dad was like, it's for a good cause. It's a good thing. But that real communication with her about the fact that she didn't want to wear a helmet because she was concerned about what other people would think, and that in reality, she should say to other people, F you. And it was something where we connected on a level that was better than that. But so that's where the cussing, I think, can really be valuable, because if you can use it in good situations to prove a good point, it works because it emphasizes a better amount of, it emphasizes a growth in the matter of things, right? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to be like, to cuss every now and then, but there is some value to it. But so that's something that you're going to have when you have older brothers. So back to high school and back to the lacrosse kind of story. So let's see, where are we at? Okay. This is my senior year, doing pretty well. And we had a trip going up to Boulder, right? Is something going on with YouTube? If you're watching on YouTube, let me know how it's going. I'm getting an error that YouTube's not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. I need to text Wendy and be like, get off the internet. So basically, senior year, we're going up to Boulder, and as we're going to Boulder, we had to bring 2 teams on one bus. And so I'm sitting in the very back on the floor, and we ended up getting shut out by Boulder. I've never been shut out in a lacrosse game in my life, and we got shut out by Boulder. And, our offense wasn't the greatest. I got moved to midi my senior year because basically we needed someone who could clear and we didn't really have anyone else. And so we had other good players, but not having me, it was just the best bet was to move me at midi. And I loved it because dodging shorties is way better than dodging poles. Like, screw dodging poles. And so basically that was just the story. We got shut out, yada, yada. Then the last game of the year, we played Overland. And Overland was a lot better this year. This was like their 1 year to make the playoffs. And so we're playing Overland. If we win, we get into the playoffs. If we don't get into the playoffs. And in this game, we're down 3 goals with like 4 or 5 minutes left. I score 1 goal. I assist another goal. I assist the 3rd goal. We're tied, right? And so we're literally tied, and we go into overtime. And as we go into overtime, we're on offense, and then we go into defense, and I'm playing defense, and I'm gassed, totally gassed. And I remember running off the field, and my head coach, Eric Genova, looks at me, and he goes, "Really? What are you doing? Like, we're in overtime. We need you to go score a goal." And as I exit the field, the kid who broke his leg's little brother, Fatty, I don't remember his, sorry, Fatty, I don't remember your actual first name. Either way, Fatty Fasano goes in for me. Not 10 seconds later, he scores the game-winning goal against Overland to go to the playoffs for the very first time in Smoky for a long, long while, right? And so that was a very cool experience. So I ended up with, I think, 3 goals, 4 assists in that game to go there. And so there's this picture of me, Pat Rimmel, Dan Caruth, and I forget who else is in the picture, but basically I'm throwing up like 3 and 4, which yada yada. But so that was definitely a very cool experience because it was just the, end of game, like, winning thing. So that was definitely pretty cool. And so, let's see. So then we go into the playoffs, and by the time the playoffs happened, I was pretty, as much as I love lacrosse, there are times when if you overdo it, you just got to do a new thing with lacrosse. Like, I like just playing, having fun a lot more than I like making it super, super serious. And so I hope that a lot of the players that play for me now realize that and understand that, thank you for letting me know. The sound is out of sync. YouTube is fine. Okay, perfect. So basically I like to play. I think the game is a gift, and I think that if you just play it, you're going to get the benefits from it. That's going to be a huge theme as we move through 2020 and with a lot of the new kind of stuff that I do. I'm hoping that I can get through in 18 minutes. I don't know if I can get all the way through college and through the actual thing of POWLAX, but either way, we'll see how far. I knew this was going to take more than one live stream anyway. So, a couple other little things about high school. One thing about high school that was very impactful for me was I'd go to all these camps, right? And I went to the Powell Brothers lacrosse camp, and I watched the Powell brothers religiously, right? So Ryan, Casey, Mikey was playing when I think I was 8th grade, kind of going into high school. But so I remember going to their camp in high school. I want to say I was probably 16 because it was in Golden, and I remember that I could drive because I drove back down. But so as I was driving, as we were doing it, I did a stick trick competition. And because I had played so much with my stick tricks in the basement, like I didn't stall a lot. I just bounced it, but I could go over twice and I could do all these little things. And so I remember we do the stick trick competition, and then they line us up, and I think Ryan put his hand over all of us as we went. And so there's 5 of us. I'm 4th. He puts his hand over the first person. Yay. Second person. Yay. Third person. Kind of nothing. 4th person, that's me. Yay. And I was like, what? Like, I was way better than any of these kids. How are you not going to give it to me? And Ryan Powell had actually skipped over my head to the 5th person and then went back to me as 5th because essentially they knew that I had actually won. And so that was so cool to win something from some legendary kind of players who were there. And so either way, I'm going to try not to get off track into some new stuff that's developing, but it's definitely something that I remember. And so another thing I remember with the Powell brothers was when Syracuse came to DU, I'm not exactly sure which year, But Mikey was playing, and I followed Mikey and Ryan out to the parking lot at DU and was like, oh, I got to do a trick. I remember you from camp. And Mikey took his stick, threw his legs, and essentially rainbowed the stick up over his head and then caught it. And I was like, that was sick. Like, that was so cool. And so then what do? I go and I try it, and I inevitably get it at some point. But that's another key. And I don't think I concluded that point back at the beginning. The reason why I love lacrosse tricks is because you fail so much at the beginning. You fail all the time, even just stalling. Like, stalling is hard to learn to begin with. But once you get it and you can do it consistently, and then you learn to spin, then you learn to underspin, it becomes this thing where you realize how much failure is a part of just trying, and that you have to fail in order to do anything. And so I love that mentality, because it's something that everyone needs to just understand. Like, why would you not go try whatever it is you want to go try? Because yes, you're going to fail at it, but it's how you get there. It's what you do. So, what up, CJ? I wonder if CJ's still on Instagram. He might not be. People seem to hop into Instagram and then hop out, because that's kind of what Instagram is. I don't feel like people on Instagram or even TikTok are really going to watch a whole live stream. Whereas YouTube, it's way more likely. So let's see if we're going into college. Okay, so I think I'll end with a story about getting into college, because I think it's something that's very pertinent for a lot of the younger viewers who are, I don't know if there are any younger viewers even watching, but anyone who's about to go into college. So let's see. First off, I didn't look at colleges. I didn't go out and search and do and search through and look at all of them and see who did what and yada, yada. I just didn't do any of it. I was never a player who played for anywhere that was going to, people were going to come and they were going to pull you out of class. Like, I remember hearing stories from my dad about my brother that, Ohio Wesleyan came to the school and got him out of class to talk to him about going there. And my brother made the decision to not go and play Division III, to go to UNC, Northern Colorado, and essentially he coached and played for their club team. And, they got annihilated by DU, and they got annihilated by CU and CSU, but he had a blast. He didn't want it to run his life. And I feel like in the same sense, I am the same way, yet I've kind of made my life about lacrosse, but I'm never in the position where I have to do something for someone else. And I think that's what benefits me through my creative enterprises, because I'm never going to have to make something that I don't believe in doing. So there's this whole thing on the 8U, 10U, 12U thing that I'm going to be doing here soon. And I haven't started it even, because I need to conceptualize it fully for each age group before I begin, so I know that I'm not super rebuilding. But so there's other things that I'm working on now that will be hopefully just as beneficial. So it's my senior year. I'm at a DU camp, and I'm watching Jamie Monroe teach a kid from Creek how to do a stick foot rollback. A stick foot rollback is essentially where you're carrying one-handed, or say you're right-handed, and you use your right foot to impact the ground hard, and you spin around that foot. So usually on change of direction dodges, you have to go, outside foot, inside foot, turn, and then you explode out of it, right? This is something where you're kind of going to go half speed, and because if one leg can't make yourself stop from going full speed to going the other way, it's essentially the idea that a change of speed and direction is more important than how fast you go either way. Like, if I'm going slowly one way, but I change direction and explode out of it, either way, that's the benefit. But so he's explaining it to this kid from Creek, and this kid from Creek must have been pretty good. I don't know who he was, but I was sitting there, like, very much so eyeing them, like, he's explaining it to this other kid, but I'm there watching. I don't know if Jamie knew who I was at that point. But then Coach Hannon, who is now at Mercer, who was at Goucher, had sent Pat, his assistant coach, to DU because Kyle Hannon and Coach Monroe were friends, and they ended up actually recruiting me from the DU camp. So I never really watched colleges. I also took a trip to Elmira College in upstate New York. Really happy I didn't go there because I would have been miserable there, probably even more than Goucher once my ACL tore. But in the same sense, I never actually looked. But so the key I'll tell you, and so I just mentioned that I tore my ACL when I was at Goucher, so I did end up at Goucher, which I really did enjoy. And if I could go back there now, I'm like, this place is great, like total resort style college. So if you're at Goucher now, stay there, like enjoy your time, but make sure you're working on the right things. But if I could have gone back, if I could go back now, which I wouldn't do because I wouldn't be here and I like where I'm at now, but either way, if I could reevaluate my decision and see where I went wrong by not evaluating what type of school I was going to and what I was going to be working on. So, junior year of high school, junior year of high school, I have a class called AP Psychology with Miss Wetmore. Miss Wetmore was an excellent teacher. The first day, I remember this day very well because it was like, whoa. So, here's what happened on the first day. We walk into class. There are little green sheets of paper on the desks upside down. Everyone goes, they sit in the class. I remember I went kind of to this back corner area, so the desks were set up in little like pods where there was like 5 desks that were pointing each other because we did a lot of work together. But so I sat in a seat that could essentially see the whole room. But as I sat down and flipped the piece of paper over, the piece of paper said, "Why'd you sit where you sat?" And I was like, I don't know. Because I can see everyone. I like the idea of having things in front of me where I can see them. No one's behind me, about to sneak up on me like my brother and poke me in the ribs, which he did all the time. But so there's that element of that aspect of it. And I went, man, I would love to figure out why I do the stuff I do. And so immediately loved psychology, immediately loved learning about the optical illusions, about how, the behaviorists were different than the, psychoanalysts and, all of this stuff. I just loved it. And my older brother, Tim, when I was getting ready to go to college, he was a computer guy and, he was doing quite well. He created this software to help schools and then ended up selling it. But so I really admired him. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll do computer science. So I did computer science my first little bit at Goucher. But I had an 8 a.m. class and I ended up getting a D in it and I never really got into it. And now I wish I had more of it because I have this idea that I want to do through an app and yada, yada. But so I started to do computer science. Didn't like it. Didn't have a passion for it because psychology wasn't something that had money in it. So I started chasing money and it was dumb. It was stupid to chase money because we'll get to this kind of at the end. But if you don't love what you're doing, you're not going to do it as much as someone else who does love what they're doing. So the idea is to go try as many things as you can. So that's the caveat of this is had I not tried to do computer science, I don't think I would have realized that it wasn't really for me. Then I tried business, also not for me. Then I went back to psychology as I went to CU and ended up graduating with a degree in psychology and neuroscience. Now, I don't use psychology or as far as what I studied. I use some of the behavioral sciences stuff and the child development stuff and the clinical stuff within how I relate to players, but I don't do it knowingly. I just kind of fit it. Like it fit me. It was something that I enjoyed studying because it fit who I was and it matched up with what I do rather than me trying to learn something new and prescribe it to what I do. So the point of that was, as we get into the idea of college through this, is that as a high schooler, you probably can't evaluate what you want to do in the world because you've never evaluated it. However, trust what you're interested in. That's the point, is to trust what you want to do because you can be anything. And if you want to be something that has to do with something you're interested in, you're going to do it a lot better than anybody else. That's why I do lacrosse. That's what we'll kind of get to in the next kind of stage of everything. I can't believe we only got through high school in, in about an hour. So we got like 5 minutes left to be an hour. I could probably get through college, but maybe we will, maybe we won't. So let's see if there's anything else I can. So Goucher also recruited Alan Tiet, who played at Smoky, and he was a year older than me. I remember my first goal at Goucher was I remember scoring, and Dan Flamholtz, he was the righty attackman that was there, that was a year older than me. He came over. He was like, no, like you're good, you're good. I was all super excited. It was against Greensboro. I have it on a DVD somewhere. A DVD, for you kids that don't know, is a little disc that you put into a thing. Yeah, it's old technology, I know. But so, let's see. That'd be a good place to stop. I'll stop at the ACL. So I'm at Goucher. Goucher's an unbelievable place. It's literally like a little, it's like a little resort in Baltimore, Maryland. Well, Towson, Maryland. It's up over the hill from Towson, and it's essentially, if you think about where, it's like a wooded area that's kind of hollowed out. But so it's like, I don't know how many acres it is, but it's a pretty good amount of space where, as you're coming in, you're surrounded by trees. It's great for equestrian. We used to run through the trees as we were playing, and it was definitely an excellent place. But so my freshman year, I think I had like 8 goals, something like that. Like, I didn't play too much. I wasn't, a starter. I played a little bit. I remember there's one play where we were in overtime and I caught the ball on the bottom right side of a fast break and just froze. I was just nervous and yada yada. But so sophomore year comes around, and we scrimmaged against the freshmen and sophomores of the University of Maryland. So those kids are really, really good. Obviously, like, Maryland's always been very, very good. They're the best players, and these are just the freshmen and sophomores. So, and at this point, I was a sophomore as well. So Bryant Boucher, who now lives out here, him and his brother were at Goucher as well. But Bryant fed me 2 passes inside that I caught and finished against the University of Maryland's freshmen and sophomores, and that was way cool. So we lost this scrimmage 13-4, but I had 2 of our 4 goals, so I felt pretty good about myself actively scoring those 2 goals. So we do that as the beginning of our sophomore year, and then 2 days before our first game, we're in the gym playing at Goucher. And so as I'm playing in college, I took it seriously. We were lifting. We were doing all this. I probably felt better than I've ever felt athletically in my life. The lifting was really helping. Everything was going very well. My strength improved so much that I was able to, run through checks a lot more. Like, I was the best player I probably have ever been at this point. Oh man, throwing balls to people. We would do this. I think people call it the Hamster Drill, where you have 4 players, 2 on the outside, 2 on the inside, and the 2 on the inside, like, essentially go in a circle. And so you throw it to one, he throws it back to you from the outside. But I would piss people off because I would literally throw it to where, as they turned, it would just hit them in the stick. So I'd throw it before they'd look, but as they turned, it would naturally hit their stick. So they'd have to basically, it would catch them off guard either way. But so the skill element of it was the best I'd ever done. So we're practicing in the gym one day, and we're doing 2v2s from behind. So we're doing kind of picking. It was really just 2v2s because you could do whatever you want. And as we're playing, I'm being defended by a kid named Max. Max was a big defensive kid, kind of short but stocky, but real big, very powerful. I think he won the bench press record that year for us. But so, big kid. And I catch the ball from the coach. I look to go to X to get a pick, and then I take it outside. I get up above GLE, I impact him, I step away, I hitch, I get over the top, I shoot it, top right, goal. Absolutely sweet. Felt really good. Definitely a great play within a rep. It was a good rep. Second time comes up, same thing happens. And now, as I make my move, I do the same thing. I get up, I hop away, I hitch, my toe catches the floor, my knee pops, and I hit the floor, and I'm just like, I knew it right away. It was something where, if you imagine like just the full-on letdown of everything hit you all at once, that's what it felt like. Because I knew it wasn't something that was going to, like that I was going to be able to play soon. It was like the part of me that made me go to this school, the part of me that was so beneficial to who I was, that was so ingrained in who I was just taken. All in that one split moment, because as I hitched, my toe caught the floor and snapped. So I think that's where I'm going to leave everything. So that's definitely I think we'll have to like rehash a bit of the college as we come through next week. But so Instagram is only going to let me talk for another minute. But so we'll pick this up, I think, through college at Goucher. I'll kind of rehash a little bit of that next week, and then we will kind of get into that. But so, I think eventually tearing my ACL became one of the best things that happened to me because it, put me here and yada, yada. But in the same sense, as you think about what I said about going towards your passions for college and making sure that whatever you think is interesting at the time, going and doing that because you're going to do it better than other people. Because if you don't like what you do, you're not going to invest into it what another person will invest into it. That's like, you have to go do that. And that's what I didn't understand at that point, because I chose my college for lacrosse, and in that instant, lacrosse was taken from me. And so at that point, I had to reevaluate some stuff. And so we are going to end that here. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next week. And